Hey guys, tonight we're setting sail into one of the quieter corners of maritime legend. No can of fire, no daring escapes, and definitely no heroic sacrifices. Just creaking wood, damp boots, and the slow unraveling of a story almost too odd to be made up. You'll find yourself aboard a forgotten pirate vessel with an even more forgotten crew, chasing the absurd idea that something magical, maybe even impossible, once drifted alongside them. You're standing barefoot on the deck of the Pale Finch, a ship so unremarkable it could vanish behind a large wave. The wood is salt-worn and soft in spots, and the sails flap lazily in the evening breeze like half-hearted applause. Somewhere nearby, someone's humming an off-key sea shanty about an octopus with a gambling addiction. The stars overhead feel unusually low, as if the skies decided to lean in and eavesdrop. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling cozy enough already, drop your location and local time in the comments. Always fun to see where you're all drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You lean over the rail and watch the ocean move beneath you, sluggish, inky, endlessly vast. Someone's dropped a herring overboard, and it floats strangely, as if confused about the concept of gravity. You've been at sea long enough that nothing really surprises you anymore. The crew is mostly quiet, save for a few murmurs about supper being late and boots being wet. You've stopped asking when you reach shore. You no longer care. This isn't a famous voyage. There are no songs about it, no monuments in dusty museums. Just half a page in a sailor's diary, ink blurred and riddled with spelling errors, found years later in a bottle that washed up near the coast of Cartagena. It mentioned only the ship's name, a string of coordinates nobody can agree on, and something about a unicorn with eyes like mirrors. The Pale Finch is old, even by pirate standards. A converted merchant vessel, it creaks with every sway like an old man grumbling in his sleep. Below deck, the hammocks hang low, swinging with a rhythm that almost feels deliberate. You pass by the cook's station. He's reheating salted cod that smells like ambition and failure. Someone stitched a tiny X on their sock, claiming it wards off barnacles. It doesn't. You catch snippets of gossip about a captain who wears only one glove and never on the same hand twice. About the strange way the compass needles keep twitching south, even when you're heading west. And about that night a crew member saw something silver breach the water, too far away to name, too graceful to be a whale. They say he hasn't spoken since there's a cat on board. Its name changes daily. Today it's Admiral Splinters. It sleeps in the crow's nest and wakes up only to yawn in judgment. Someone once tried to throw it overboard for bad luck, but the cat bit his ear, and now they leave it be. The crew is a forgettable mix of has-beens and never-will-bes. Most have long since given up the dream of buried treasure. They're here for the meals, bad, the company, worse, and the quiet promise that something interesting might happen, eventually. And then there's the captain. You've barely seen him. He rarely leaves his quarters. When he does, it's to pace the deck in measured steps, muttering to himself and staring off into the distance, as if the sea owes him an apology. He carries a single glove, blue velvet, embroidered with what looks like a snail, but could also be a sideways parrot. He never explains it. Nobody asks. One night, just after the moon's risen and the waves have settled into their usual grumble, you hear him speaking in low tones near the helm. You sneak closer. He's telling a story. No, the story. He says it started years ago. A calm morning. No wind, no sound but the slosh of sea against hull. He just finished shaving with a broken mirror when he saw it. A shape rising from the water, sleek, silver, and gleaming in the sun. A horn, long and curved, spiraling like a cinnamon stick blessed by Neptune. He claims the creature made eye contact. Not just a glance, but a knowing look, like it recognized something in him. Then it was gone. Just gone. You cough. He turns, sees you, and smiles as if he's relieved someone heard him say it out loud. The sea keeps secrets, he mutters. But sometimes it whispers them, if you're foolish enough to listen. The next morning, you're assigned to bilge duty, which may or may not be a coincidence. You start to pay closer attention. The ship's course feels erratic, as if following a dream rather than a map. One day, you spot a dolphin with scars shaped like tally marks. Another, the water glows faintly green. No one mentions it. Below deck, someone's carved a tiny unicorn into a support beam. You ask who did it. No one answers. Historians still argue whether the pale finch ever existed. The ship's logs are missing. The captain's name appears only once, in a tax record involving 7 barrels of spoiled peaches and a forged priest's signature. Yet the story survives, passed in low voices between sailors who swear they knew someone who was there. And now, you're there too. The captain wears one glove, always just one, and never on the same hand 2 days in a row. Today, it's on his right. Yesterday it was left. Tomorrow? He hasn't decided. It's blue, made of faded velvet with tiny silver thread along the seams, though much of it has unraveled. There's a worn patch shaped vaguely like a nautilus shell, or maybe it's just a very tired swirl. You spot him again near the quarterdeck, his boot resting on a coil of rope, his gloved hand shading his eyes. He's staring into the distance, jaw clenched as if he's waiting for a ghost ship to rise from the horizon. The rest of the crew tiptoes around him. He isn't cruel, just unpredictable. He once ordered the ship to sail in a perfect circle for 3 days, to confuse the sea spirits. When asked why, he responded only, "They get bored like we do." You're not sure if he's joking. Nobody knows his real name. He simply goes by Captain Gully. Some say it's short for gullible. Others think it's because he once lived in a seaside ravine. His accent shifts like the tide. Sometimes he sounds Portuguese, other days like a bored Scotsman. You once heard him use the phrase, miserable swabbery, in dead seriousness. Gully doesn't drink much. That alone sets him apart. Most captains you've heard about in sailor lore had rum for breakfast and grog for lunch. Gully prefers tea. Specifically, a blend of kelp and dried apple peel brewed in a cracked ceramic mug shaped like a walrus. No one else is allowed to touch the mug. Ever. His cabin is off limits. But once, during a storm, the door blew open. You caught a glimpse. A map of the sea stretched across the back wall, drawn entirely in charcoal, and what looked suspiciously like squid ink. Tiny inked creatures swam along its borders. There were dozens of pins stuck into it, most labeled with symbols instead of names. One was just a sketch of a spiral. The glove, though, that's what gets talked about most. One morning, while helping mend a torn sail, you ask groggily, the ship's oldest crewmate, possibly 60, possibly 104, about it. "Oh, the glove?" he says, picking his teeth with a fishbone. "That glove saved his life. Least that's what he says. Something about a duel, or a blizzard, or a sea witch. Changes each time, mind you. Has he always worn it?" "Not always," Groggly shrugs. "Started after he saw it. You don't even have to ask what it means. You know. The story's already sunk its barnacles into your brain. Later you notice something. On the days he wears the glove on the right, he's cheerful, even chatty. Left-hand days? Sullen. Quiet. Once, he barked at a seagull for looking smug. Historians still argue whether pirates were truly superstitious or just creatively bored. Certainly, Gully's glove feels like the kind of thing that would have been scoffed at in the British Navy. But aboard the Pale Finch, it holds a kind of quiet reverence. Once, a crewman tried to touch it, just to see what it felt like. That man, Donk, short for donkey teeth, fell overboard 2 days later. Flat sea. Clear skies. No one saw it happen. The glove was on the left hand that day. The captain's routines are as erratic as the weather. He wakes before dawn, walks the deck barefoot for exactly 77 paces, then disappears for hours. Sometimes he reemerges with drawings, sea creatures that blend fantasy and biology. One sketch shows a narwhal-like figure with barnacled jewelry and 3 distinct eyes. Another appears to be a jellyfish shaped like a crown. "Did you draw these from memory?" you ask one night. "No," he says, not looking up. "From feeling." You wait, but he offers nothing more. It becomes clear over time. The captain believes in what he saw. Not just as a fanciful tale to keep the crew entertained, but as a memory he can't quite escape. Like a dream that got stuck behind his eyes. He doesn't shout. Doesn't laugh much either. But when the moon is high and the sea is glassy, he hums, low and soft. The tune always ends on the same unresolved note, like he's waiting for someone, or something, to finish it. One rainy afternoon, you're scrubbing barnacles from the hull. Glamorous life, this, when you hear a splashing noise. You look up. The captain's tossing what looks like dried lavender into the sea. "What's that for?" you ask. "Smells better than blood," he mutters. You do not ask follow-up questions. Crew lore gets weirder. Someone claims the glove was sewn from the tail of the unicorn thing itself. Another insists the captain pulled it from a treasure chest that only opened when the moon hit it just so. Grogley thinks it belonged to a monk who lost a bet. It doesn't matter, really. What matters is how the captain acts with it on. The glove has become an extension of his mood, his memory, his myth. On bright days, when the sea is calm and the sky gentle, he touches the rail with the gloved hand and whispers, "She's out there." You think he means the unicorn. But who knows? Maybe it's the sea. Maybe it's someone else. There's something oddly comforting about it all. The world of pirates is usually told in bursts. Battles, betrayals, buried chests, and gunpowder. But here, drifting aimlessly with a half-mad captain and a glove that may or may not be enchanted, you feel something closer to calm. No one's getting rich. No one's seeking revenge. They're just floating and chasing a unicorn. The first time the tale is told aloud, not whispered in passing, not muttered into a tankard, but declared with full, almost theatrical intent, is in the port of Tortuga. A place not known for subtlety or sincerity, Tortuga is a tangled mess of slanted taverns, toothless arguments, and the lingering smell of warm rum and damp wool. You dock there on a cloudy Thursday, and the captain, uncharacteristically, insists on coming ashore. You follow. The tavern is called the Splintered Rudder, and it leans slightly to the left, as though it's tired of trying. Inside, sailors drink like they've forgotten how not to, and someone's playing a sad tune on a cracked flute that sounds vaguely like a dying pigeon. The captain sits at a table near the back, his glove, today on the left hand, resting on a tankard of something that smells like turpentine with citrus ambition. Around him, a few sailors gather, some from your own ship, some not. You recognize a man with an eye patch who doesn't actually need it, and a woman with a parrot who seems to resent her. The room quiets just slightly, not enough to notice, unless you're paying attention, and then, without warning, the captain speaks. His voice carries in that weird, magnetic way that only good liars and better storytellers seem to manage. "It rose," he says, "just before dawn. Silver, slick, smooth like ice that never melts. A horn, long as a harpoon, spiraled like sugar candy. And eyes like polished obsidian, but blinking. Watching. Someone snorts. Someone else leans in. He tells the tale slowly. Says he was alone, far from any coast. The sea had gone glass flat. The wind disappeared. Even the gulls were gone. Just silence. Heavy, unnatural silence. And then it breached, he says, voice barely above a whisper. Didn't splash. Didn't roar. Just rose, hovered, and looked. He says it circled the ship once. Close enough for him to see faint ridges along its skin. Not scales. Not fur. Something else, like the texture of tree bark soaked in moonlight. And then it was gone, he adds, finishing his drink and slamming the empty tankard down like a period at the end of a sentence. Silence. Then a laugh. A high, nervous one. A bearded man with 2 belts and no shoes claps mockingly. You saw a narwhal, Captain. Probably drunk on kelp wine. Gully doesn't flinch. Narwhals don't wink at you, he says. And they don't hum sea shanties under their breath. The laughter stops. It's absurd. Ridiculous, even. The idea of a sea unicorn, one with apparent musical taste and an understanding of eye contact, is a bit too far, even for Tortuga. But something in the captain's tone, his posture, makes the room hesitate. You've seen liars before. They talk too much, or too little. Their stories bend at the corners. But this feels different. Not like a fabrication. More like a dream he's desperately trying to remember. And every time he tells it, the shape of it shifts slightly. But the feeling stays the same. You sit back and listen, letting the words wash over you. He talks about how it moved, gliding rather than swimming. He describes the way its horn caught the sunrise, and how the ship's compass spun madly as it passed. Mainstream historians mostly ignore tales like these. The Royal Maritime Society, for instance, once published a sternly worded essay on the psychological effects of prolonged ocean exposure, citing sunstroke, salted meat hallucinations, and boredom-induced sea myths. One footnote mentions aquatic horned specters, but only to dismiss them. Still, the fringe persists. Some scholars of maritime folklore argue that seafaring cultures from Norway to the South Pacific have described similar creatures. The Japanese call it shikai no hibi, serpent of the deep sea. Portuguese sailors once feared o cornudo do mar, a horned beast said to whisper secrets to lonely men. And now, here's Captain Gully, spinning his yarn in a broken tavern while men with knives in their boots and secrets in their pockets listen with one ear cocked and one eye squinting. Back at your table, someone stabs a pickled onion with their dagger. If it sang, they mutter. Was it any good? Gully smirks. Had better pitch than you. The room chuckles. Just like that, the tension breaks. People go back to drinking. The parrot swears under its breath. Life returns to normal, or what passes for it in Tortuga. But you keep thinking about the way he said it. It watched me. As if the creature wasn't just a thing to be seen, but something seen. Intentionally. Curiously. Perhaps even knowingly. Outside, the sky begins to drizzle, and the streets turn to soft mud. You and the captain walk back to the ship in silence. He doesn't seem proud of what he said, nor embarrassed. Just finished. Like someone who's scratched an old itch and knows it'll return again anyway. That night, as the pale finch gently rocks in its berth, you lie awake and stare at the wooden beams above your hammock. You think about the horn, the eyes, the humming, and just before sleep pulls you under, you swear you hear a low tune echoing faintly through the hull, melodic, slow, and impossibly sad. They didn't all believe him, of course. Pirate crews aren't known for being particularly credulous, or particularly rational. They're equal parts skeptical and superstitious. which is a confusing mix when you think about it. Half the crew wore lucky trinkets, avoided bananas at sea, and wouldn't whistle near the sails, but a unicorn? That was too far. You start to notice the lines forming. Not formal factions, pirates don't do formal, but moods, clusters, quiet nods exchanged in the shade of the mainsail. There's one group, mostly the younger lads, a few old-timers with half-healed scars and more tattoos than teeth, who lean into the tail. They carve spirals into driftwood, they hum the song the captain swears he heard, they keep a lookout for silver flashes on the horizon. Groggly starts carrying a small mirror in his coat pocket. Just in case, he says. You don't ask what he means. The others scoff. Not loudly, but often. They mutter, tide mad, under their breath, roll their eyes whenever Gully walks past with his seaweed tea, and loudly declare every ripple in the water to be just another fish. One swears that the captain's glove is actually cursed, probably sewn from the hide of a demon goat. Which explains the smell. He adds that you're somewhere in the middle. Some days you want to believe. On others you can't help but side-eye the creaking planks and wonder if you're all slowly going mad together, one salty biscuit at a time. It doesn't help that the ocean starts acting odd. The weather, for one, refuses to follow any kind of logic. Calm mornings dissolve into abrupt, swirling winds by mid-afternoon. The compass twitches. The sun rises in a haze and sets behind clouds that move in spirals. You're pretty sure one of them was shaped like a narwhal horn. And then there are the sounds. The sea is never truly silent. It groans, sloshes, whispers to itself in a language too old to translate. But lately, there's something else beneath it all, a low hum, so deep you feel it in your ribs. Like a cello string vibrating through the ocean floor. Nobody wants to be the first to mention it. So you don't. One night, a crewmate named Lanks, tall, jittery, constantly adjusting his belt, comes stumbling up from the lower hold. He's pale and twitching, hands shaking like a nervous tambourine. Saw it, he whispers. Something moved past the porthole. Long silver, with an eye like a pearl dipped in ink. Naturally, no one believes him. Groggly says he probably drank bilge water again. Lanks insists he hasn't touched anything stronger than rain. That night, no one sleeps easy. The captain begins holding strange, brief meetings. Not proper speeches, just murmured suggestions, warnings about keeping your eyes open at dusk, not leaning too far over the rail, and staying calm if something unusual breaks the surface. Do not scream, he says once. Unless it's a joyful scream. They like joy. You glance around. No one questions who they are. You all just sort of nod. Historians still argue whether pirate crews operated more democratically than naval ships. Some claim pirates voted on leadership, food rations, even plundering plans. Others say it was chaos wrapped in mutiny waiting to happen. On the Palefinch, there's no vote. Just silence and a growing sense that you've left the normal ocean behind and entered something older, deeper, and considerably more peculiar. The unicorn debate heats up quietly. At mealtimes, usually a grim affair featuring beans that crunch when they shouldn't, you hear the whispers. Some sailors believe it's a spirit, others say it's an omen. A few start using euphemisms, the silvery friend, the pointy dream, old spiral face. You do your best to focus on chores. Rope coiling, deck scrubbing, trying not to stare too long into the water. It feels different now, more like a mirror. Like if you peer hard enough, you might see yourself looking back, but slightly off, with barnacles for teeth or kelp in your hair. One afternoon, while you're helping patch a sail, a crew member named Tully, small, sharp, always chewing dried mango, leans over and mutters, "You don't think he made it up, do you?" You shrug. "I mean, he believes it, sure," Tully continues. But that doesn't mean it's true. Could be he saw a whale in moonlight. Or a chunk of floating silverware. Things blur, you know. Out here. You nod. You do know. Blurred things are becoming alarmingly normal. Still, the unicorn lives on. In sketches, in songs, in dreams. Someone carves a tiny spiral horn onto the masthead. No one admits to doing it, but Gully doesn't remove it either. A quiet, unofficial blessing. Then the parrot dies. Not Admiral Splinters. The ship cat is still going strong, meowing disdainfully at everyone. No, this was a parrot belonging to one of the Tortuga recruits. It stops eating, grows quiet, and one night lets out a strangled croak that sounds unnervingly like the word, beware. Then it keels over. Half the ship panics. Gully remains calm. He wraps the bird in a cloth, hums the same sad melody, and tosses it gently into the sea. Everything returns, he says. Even nonsense. You sleep poorly that night. The stars overhead feel too bright. The water too still. Somewhere in the dark, you think you see a glimmer, a curve of silver just beneath the waves. You blink, and it's gone. Or maybe it never was. The ship's charts are becoming more and more confusing. You're not the navigator. Thank heavens. But you've seen enough maps in your day to know when something looks off. The captains are, let's say, artistic. You notice this first when asked to deliver an inkpot to his quarters and catch a glimpse of his spread on the table. Old vellum maps overwritten with strange symbols, spiral patterns, and thin lines connecting islands that don't appear on any other chart. Stars are drawn onto the sea, and sea creatures float among the constellations. One quadrant is labeled, might be real. Another says, definitely lied. You glance at a compass rose that's been replaced entirely with a sketch of what appears to be a narwhal with legs. Its expression is suspiciously smug. Captain Gully stands over it all with furrowed brows, murmuring as he traces one of the spiral patterns with the tip of a feather quill. These stars don't match, he mutters. They should have shifted eastward, but they haven't. Unless she moved them again. You don't ask who she is. You're learning. Historians often debate whether pirate captains truly used celestial navigation or simply followed the coast and hoped for the best. Some were brilliant astronomers. Others couldn't read. Gully, it seems, lands somewhere between genius and chaos goblin. His charts are covered in calculations and footnotes, some mathematical, others more poetic. One margin reads, if she hums again, count 3 breaths, then turn north. Another, fish swam in a circle at this spot, maybe try singing here? There are star positions that don't match any sky you've seen, and notations referencing constellations like the Drowned Lady and the Horned Wanderer. You're pretty sure one of them is just Orion in a fancy HAT.AT dinner. You mention this quietly to Groggly, who just snorts. He's been drawing those since before the finch had a name, he says. Says he dreamed M. Woke up with ink on his hands and a crab chewing his sock. Swore it was a message. You try not to think too hard about prophetic crabs. But the maps, they start affecting the ship's course. You notice it slowly at first. A gentle shift in direction. A reluctance to follow winds that seem favorable. Gully begins ordering course changes at odd hours. Midnight turns, morning backtracks. At one point, he commands a full-day drift without the sails raised. Just floating. Waiting. Following the stillness, he says, sipping tea. Stillness? On the sea. That's like chasing silence in a tavern. But then, something strange happens. One cloudless night. The ship drifts into a patch of ocean where the stars, hundreds of them, seem wrong. Brighter. Closer. Slightly off-kilter, like someone tilted the sky. One star pulses faintly blue. You stare at it too long and get a headache behind your eyes. The compass spins. The air smells like burned cinnamon. You hear someone behind you mutter, "She's watching." You don't turn around. Down below, the charts continue to evolve. Gully updates them constantly, muttering to himself, sometimes chuckling, once loudly declaring, "You can't map longing." One afternoon, you pass by his door and hear snoring, interrupted by frantic scribbling. You peek through the keyhole. He's asleep, but his hand is moving, sketching something on parchment in small, frantic loops. You catch a glimpse, a spiral shape, again and again, coiling tighter and tighter until the ink runs thick and dark like oil. You back away. By now, the crew has accepted the maps as gospel. Not because they make sense, but because something is happening. The weather changes. The waves flatten. Sea birds vanish. It's as if they're entering a different kind of ocean entirely. One mapped more by feeling than fact. A younger crewmate named Jory begins copying parts of Gully's charts into his own notebook. You ask why. "In case we don't make it back." He shrugs. You don't laugh. Later, Gully calls you into his cabin. No warning. Just a low voice from the shadows. "You. Come see." He spreads out a fresh sheet. This is where she appeared last." You look. Nothing's labeled. Just a spiral, a few dots. A short phrase in small cursive. "Glass smooth sea. No wind." Horns shimmered. Then, beside it, "Return soon?" With a question mark that looks like it was pressed deep enough to nearly pierce the parchment. "She?" You ask softly. He nods. "They think I'm chasing a dream. Maybe I am. But I've felt her presence. The sea gets heavy when she's near. The sky grows hush quiet. And the stars." He trails off, frowning. You wait. "The stars seem to realign themselves. Briefly. As if to bear witness." You have no idea what that means. You nod anyway. Historians still argue whether phantom coordinates found in old sea logs refer to storms, mirages, or simply navigation errors. A handful insist they were marks of sightings, beings that flickered briefly into the world, like a lantern's glow in fog, then vanished before logic could catch up. Whatever the case, you start seeing them in your dreams. Spirals. Stars shifting. A silver flash just beneath the surface. The maps keep growing, and you're starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, they aren't leading you forward. They're leading you back. It begins just after sunrise, though calling it that feels generous. The sun barely glances through a veil of pale mist, casting everything in a dull, wet glow, like the world is lit from inside a jellyfish. You're on deck, teeth chattering, trying to wring out a soaked shirt that somehow got wetter after you brought it below. Groggly mutters that the humidity's starting to feel personal. The lookout shouts. Not loud, more confused than panicked. You glance up to see him pointing off the port side, where the sea seems wrong. You squint. The water shimmers, not like it's reflecting the sky, but like it's emitting its own soft light, faintly blue, with occasional ripples of green and pink. The ship coasts gently into it, and the air grows still, warmer, and sweet-smelling. Lavender. No mint. No glass. There's no land. No horizon. Just water, stretching out in glowing silence. Then you see them. Dozens, maybe hundreds, of jellyfish, pulsing just below the surface. Long tendrils trail like scarves in slow motion. Their bodies glow gently, translucent and hypnotic. Some the size of dinner plates. Others as large as rowboats. One drifts by with markings that resemble letters, though none you recognize. A few of the crew gasp. One drops a mop overboard. This is her path. The captain murmurs. You don't ask who. You already know. He stands at the bow, gloved hand outstretched, not pointing, just listening, as if the jellyfish are humming a message only he can hear. Gully kneels and lowers a hand into the water. A jellyfish brushes past without stinging. The glow intensifies. You swear, for a moment, that the water purrs. Historians often note how certain regions of the sea produce natural luminescence, caused by plankton or algae. And sure, maybe that explains some of this. But the way the light responds to movement, to breath, to song, even to thought, it's not like anything you've seen, or imagined, or hallucinated from bad salt pork. And the jellyfish, they seem to form patterns. Spirals, stars, rings. Then one breaks formation, floats near the hull, and briefly rises to the surface. You catch a glimpse of its bell, within it, a swirl of silver. You stare too long. It stares back. Below deck, someone panics. Claims he saw a face in the reflection of his water bucket, not his own. You try to reassure him, but then your own reflection winks at you, and you're not entirely sure if you imagined it. The cook forgets to prepare lunch. No one notices. Instead, the crew gathers near the railings, watching the glowing field of jelly drift by. Someone starts humming. A low, wandering tune. Then another joins in. Soon, a soft, unplanned chorus fills the air, melancholic and strange, like a lullaby for the ocean. The captain does not stop them. Songs are offerings, he says, almost absently. The sea listens when we remember to speak gently. At the stern, a crewmate drops a handful of dried fruit into the water. The jellyfish pulse brighter as they pass point. One man claims he saw a shadow beneath them. Huge, slow-moving, horned. Others laugh, but their laughter dies quickly. You peer overboard. You see nothing, and yet everything. The water is clearer than glass, deeper than belief. Something shifts far below, too slow to be fish, too graceful to be a trick of light. You close your eyes. You feel it watching. Waiting point. One sailor claims to hear a voice in his head, not words, just music. Like whale song, but closer. More personal. Another mutters, "We've slipped into a sea that wasn't made for us." And perhaps you have. The ship barely creaks. The sails hang loose, yet the vessel glides forward at a gentle, impossible pace. There's no wind. No current. Just movement. Deliberate and slow, like you're being drawn inward by an invisible hand. You pass through the glowing field for hours. No one speaks above a whisper. No one sleeps. No one wants to blink. At one point, the cat, Admiral Splinters, climbs onto the railing, balances on a rope, and stares silently into the water for 20 straight minutes. Then it jumps back down and curls up at Gully's feet. He doesn't acknowledge it, but he does smile, just slightly. Groggily sits beside you, pipe in hand, though it's long since gone out. In the old days, he mutters, they said jellyfish were sea spirits, keepers of old songs, carried messages between islands, sometimes between worlds. Do you believe that? He shrugs. After today, I believe my feet are soggy and the ocean smells like memory. So maybe, somewhere ahead, the glow begins to fade. The jellyfish drift apart, returning to wherever jellyfish go. The water darkens, returning to its usual inky black. The air cools. Someone starts to cry, quietly, without drama. You leave the field behind, and yet the feeling remains. That softness, that slowness, that impossible harmony. It wasn't a hallucination. It wasn't a dream. The sea let you in, just a little. Showed you a glimpse of something old and strange and tender, and then it let you go. The crew doesn't talk about it the next morning. Not directly, anyway. They go about their duties with that odd, quiet focus people get after witnessing something beautiful and completely inexplicable. No jokes. No whistling. Just gentle creaks of wood, the occasional murmur, and the soft swish of mop against deck. Even Groggly, who once claimed to have arm wrestled a ghost for a jug of mead, keeps his mouth shut. You pass him by while coiling rope and he offers only a tired nod, like someone who's just woken from a dream they don't want to explain. The cat seems smug though. More smug than usual. You catch it basking in a sunbeam with its paw over one eye, as if it knows something. Maybe everything. The captain, however, is different. You spot him that afternoon near the helm, staring into a spyglass that's clearly not pointed at anything. When you get closer, you realize there's no lens in the thing. It's just a brass tube. Decorative. Useless. He lowers it and chuckles quietly. Had to check, he says. You wait for an explanation. He doesn't give one. That evening, he calls the crew together, not with a shout or bell, but with a simple gesture. One raised hand, gloved, right hand today, pointed skyward. The crew gathers slowly, curious. You follow, wiping salt from your shirt. He doesn't speak immediately. Just stands there, eyes closed, breathing slow. Then, we saw a sign. Everyone glances around, not quite sure if they're allowed to nod. We were meant to, he continues, voice soft. That's what the glow was. That's what the silence meant. She's close. She's watching. And soon she'll show herself. Someone asks who she is again. He doesn't answer directly. Just taps his temple once, as if to say, you already know. Now, not everyone buys into this. There's muttering afterward, especially from Bosun Lesk, a large man with forearms like rolled up rugs and a firm belief that things with horns don't belong in water. He's loudly skeptical. Next he'll tell us the moon's just a big silver eyeball. He scoffs, not so quietly. Still, he doesn't argue with the course change. Because yes, the ship is changing course again. Gully takes the wheel that night. Personally. Which he hasn't done in weeks. He whispers to the compass, traces odd runes on the spokes, and adjusts the sails by hand with a precision that's almost intimate. Historians still argue whether pirate captains navigated by science or superstition. The truth is probably both. And right now, your captain is sailing by something less visible than stars, and far less trustworthy than maps. He's sailing by feeling. The next day, it rains. Not a storm, just a gentle, endless drizzle. The kind that soaks you without ever fully announcing itself. It's oddly warm, too, and smells like sage. You notice strange things again. Seaweed tangled on the rail forms spiral shapes. Fish leap from the water, not frantically, but in slow, arching paths, almost rhythmic. The ship's bell rings once, despite no wind, no movement, and no one touching it. The cook swears he saw a silver feather on his pillow. It dissolved when he picked it up. And then, in the middle of the night, the ship stops. And those sails are down. No anchor's been dropped. The sea just holds it, not violently, just firmly. Like a hand pressing flat on the hull. Gully's already awake. He doesn't look surprised. We're close, he says. Can you feel it? You can. You do. It's in the air, thick and expectant. Like the moment right before a performance begins, when the audience has gone still and the first breath of music hasn't quite started. Then, for the first time, you hear the sound. It starts as a low vibration, subtle, barely there, like a humming inside your chest. Not around you. In you. It's not unpleasant. It's music. If music could be water. A sound without lyrics, but full of meaning. You don't understand it, but you know it isn't random. It's intentional. Curious. Maybe even playful. Others hear it too. Groggly drops his spoon. Lesk stares at the mast like it started speaking Latin. Tully whispers, "That's her. That's her song." And then, Just for a moment, you see it, out on the starboard side. A shape, slipping just beneath the surface. Long, sleek. Not silver, exactly, but light reflecting. Almost like a beam of moonlight with a body. You see the arc of its back, the flick of a tail, and something else. A spiral horn, thin and elegant, slicing the water like a quill dipped in ink. You freeze. Everyone does. No one speaks. No one moves. It's only there for a heartbeat, maybe two. Then it's gone. But you know what you saw. Later, huddled in your hammock, you try to replay it. You can't. Not fully. It already feels dreamlike, blurred at the edges. But the feeling remains: joy, confusion, wonder, and something deeper: recognition, like it saw you too. The next morning, the ship moves again. No wind, still. No current either. But the pale finch glides forward as if pulled gently by an invisible rope. Its sails slack, but its course unwavering. No one questions it, not even the skeptics. You all feel it, the sense of being guided. By mid-morning, the sky clears. Not in the usual way, with clouds drifting off and sun pushing through, but all at once. One moment, gray drizzle. The next, clean, pale blue and a light so soft it feels painted on. You find yourself on the main deck, staring out toward the horizon, where something faint begins to appear. Not land. Not sky. Something in between. It's like a shimmer, like heat rising off sand, but on water. As the ship approaches, the shimmer becomes clearer, until it resolves into a kind of dome? Or veil? Hanging just above the sea. It refracts light oddly, turning everything behind it into warped shapes and colors. You can't tell if it's fog, glass, or something else entirely. The captain steps forward. He's already wearing both gloves today, left and right. The crew stares. This has never happened before. "It's time," he says. Nobody laughs. Nobody scoffs. Bosun Lesk, the loudest doubter on board, just rubs his beard and mutters, "Guess we're all in now." The ship enters the shimmer. It doesn't feel like passing through a curtain or a cloud. It feels like wading into memory. Everything grows quieter, not just sound, but thought. Even your heartbeat feels muffled, like you've wrapped your body in velvet. And then, the water changes. Below the keel, the ocean is no longer dark blue. It's pale silver. Not reflecting the sky, just silver. Smooth, undisturbed. It feels deeper yet somehow lighter, and the sky, if you can still call it that, has lost all color. It's just light. Not white, not gold, not gray. Just light. Groggly whispers, "We've slipped out of the chart." The crew stands at the rails in silent awe. You're not sure where you are. No birds. No wind. No clouds. Just light and sea and the gentle creak of wood that sounds more like breath than timber. Then the ship stops again. This time, you don't need to check the sails. Everyone feels it. That soft, deliberate stillness. Like being cupped in two enormous hands. And then the humming returns. Louder now. Clearer. Still wordless, but closer to a melody. You can almost follow it. It rises and falls in waves, like a lullaby played on an instrument too ancient to name. You look overboard, and there, gliding just beneath the silver surface, is the creature. Not a blur, not a flash. You see it. Truly see it. Long and sleek, more streamlined than any whale, with skin like liquid pearl. Its eyes are enormous and impossibly gentle, black with hints of violet around the edges. And the horn. It spirals out from its forehead, thin and delicate but impossibly sharp-looking, shimmering faintly like morning frost catching the first sun. Around its base are ridges, almost runic. You feel it watching. Not threatening. Just curious. Calm. The ship doesn't move. Neither does the creature. You float, suspended in each other's presence. Then Gully does something no one expects. He kneels. Right there on the deck, both gloved hands pressed flat, head bowed like a penitent knight before a queen. No drama. No words. Just deep reverence. One by one, the crew follows. Even Lesk, even the cat, though it only lies down and yawns with exaggerated dignity. You kneel too. Something in the air shifts. The hum changes, grows warmer, softer, more amused. You swear you hear laughter in the vibrations, but it's not mocking. More like the laughter of someone surprised and delighted by your honesty. Then the unicorn breaches. Not fully, just its head and horn, rising slowly from the water until the sunlight kisses its face. Water rolls off its back like melted silk. The horn glows faintly blue. You see tiny barnacles clinging to its base, arranged in perfect spirals. It looks directly at you. You don't breathe. Then, you hear it, not in your ears, in your mind. A single word, not spoken but placed gently in your thoughts. Remember. And with that, the unicorn dips back beneath the waves and vanishes into the silver deep. You remain kneeling for a long while. No one says a word. Eventually, the shimmer begins to fade. The sky returns to blue. The water darkens. The wind returns, gently nudging the sails back into motion. The pale finch sails on, not faster, not slower, just on. But nothing feels quite the same. Historians still argue about the nature of sea legends. Some claim creatures like this were invented by lonely sailors desperate for wonder. Others insist they were metaphors, symbols for unreachable beauty, or the human longing for the unknown. But you were there. You saw it, and now the sea will never look the same again. The days that follow feel strangely normal. Not because things have returned to the way they were, far from it, but because no one wants to admit they haven't. You mop the deck. Groggily ties knots with too much confidence. The cook burns breakfast and blames the stove, even though you all know it's just a box with fire in it. Things resume. Mostly. But there's a softness to everything now. A hush in the way the sails snap. A pause before someone speaks. Even Lesk starts chewing slower. No one mentions what happened directly, but you feel it in the glances, in the suddenly careful way people look overboard, as though the sea is now something sacred. Gully returns to his cabin, not reclusive, just quiet. He spends hours poring over his maps again, but now they look different. The ink is lighter, the spirals gentler. Instead of wild, jagged lines and chaotic symbols, the charts now resemble constellations. Curving pathways, little stars, and in one corner, a delicately sketched horn point. One morning, he summons you. You enter his cabin, and the smell of lavender hits you like a memory. He's seated at the table, one glove off, one still on, left today, a piece of parchment in front of him. Not a map this time. A letter. He doesn't speak. Just gestures for you to sit, and then he begins dictating. The letter is not addressed to anyone in particular. It starts like a riddle and unfolds like a journal. He speaks of the shimmer, the jellyfish, the unicorn, though he never uses that word. He calls it the listener, the spiral witness, and once, the one who watches when we forget to watch back. He doesn't write this letter for glory, or proof, or madness. He writes it because someone needs to remember. They'll laugh, of course, he says, looking up at you. The map sellers, the scholars, the ones who still think the sea is flat or that it's just water. You nod. But someone will believe it, he adds. And that is enough. When he finishes, he rolls the parchment and seals it with wax from a candle that smells like honey and salt. Then he hands it to you. Hide this somewhere safe. Not somewhere clever. Just safe. You take it, not sure why, but knowing you'll obey. Historians still argue about the practice of message in the bottle letters. Some claim they were sailor confessions, others claim they were warnings or jokes. A few have been found centuries later, containing nothing but poetry or long strings of numbers. This one, though, is different. It pulses in your hand like it knows something. You slip it into your pack. For now, later, as the sun sets, you watch the water turn gold. Someone's strumming a makeshift lute, probably out of tune, but it doesn't matter. The song is slow, quiet, oddly beautiful. A new one. About spirals. And silence. And listening when the sea speaks. You notice the crew has changed. Not in their faces, but in their movements. They're gentler. Less hurried. More precise. They speak with a kind of reverence you used to only hear during storms. Even the cat has mellowed. It now prefers lounging in sunbeams over hissing at ropes. But most of all, you notice a strange new ritual taking shape. Each dawn, one crew member stands at the rail and speaks a single word into the sea. Not shouted. Not sung. Just spoken. You hear words like memory, dream, answer, wait. No one explains why they're doing this. No one asks. But everyone listens. You take your turn on the 5th day. Your word? Believe. It feels ridiculous. And yet, something about saying it aloud, to the waves, feels right. Gully watches all of this with a quiet smile. His hands are always busy now, carving, writing, sketching. One day, you see him carefully etching a spiral into the hilt of his cutlass. Another day, he's weaving silver thread into a sail corner. The course he's charted leads nowhere on any known map. And yet, you sail it anyway. The stars above begin to look different. Not because they've changed, but because you have. You start to recognize patterns you never noticed before. The way Orion's belt aligns perfectly with the mast. How the North Star seems to flicker when the ship glides smoothly. Groggly starts calling the Big Dipper the listening horn. You don't correct him. One night, you dream of silver water and a familiar spiral rising from the deep. You wake with tears in your eyes and no idea why. Historians still argue whether dreams at sea are affected by motion, salt, or superstition. They say dehydration or spoiled rations could cause visions. But this dream, this felt different. It didn't fade when you woke. It lingered. The ship sails on .no shimmer. No jellyfish. No more sightings. But something's changed forever. And somehow, you know, this isn't the end of the story. It's the middle. You notice it during the night watch, when things are quiet, when the lanterns burn low and even the sea seems to tiptoe around the hull. You're standing near the bow, arms resting on the damp rail, trying to keep your eyes open without fully waking up. It's in this state, half alert, half dreaming, that you see a spiral, not in the water, not in the stars, but on the wood itself. A pattern, faint but deliberate, carved into the railing. You run your fingers over it. Smooth. Recent. Someone's been carving quietly. You check the other side of the deck. Another one. You start looking everywhere. On barrels. On the base of the mast. On the underside of a bench near the galley. Always the same shape, a slow, elegant spiral. Sometimes large. Sometimes only the size of a coin. Never the exact same angle or depth, but always there. Someone's marking the ship. You think about asking the captain. But part of you already knows what he'd say. She asked for reminders? Maybe. Or, the sea forgets quickly, we shouldn't. In the days that follow, more symbols appear. Not just spirals now, waves. Horns. Stars. Even a single eye etched into the inside of a locker door. No one takes credit. No one removes them. They've become part of the ship. You suspect it's not just one person. Even Groggly, usually all thumbs and bluster, is seen one afternoon absent-mindedly carving something into a biscuit. He eats it before you can tell what it was. Tully shows you a new tattoo, spiral on one arm, a tiny horn on the other. It felt necessary, he says, as if that explains anything. Historians still argue over sailor tattoos. Some were marks of travels, others symbols of protection. But there's always been this idea, this deep belief, that markings on skin could carry memories, secrets, messages. Maybe these carvings are messages too, but who they're for, no one says. One day, a gull lands on the yardarm. Nothing unusual there, except it's completely white. No gray tips, no black tail. Just pure, cloud-colored feathers. It watches the crew for a while. Then it opens its beak and lets out a sound unlike anything you've ever heard from a bird. Not a squawk. Not a cry. A note, clear, perfect, musical. The crew falls still. Then the bird lifts off and vanishes into the clouds. Nobody speaks for several minutes. Later, you find Gully sitting by the helm, muttering into a book. He's not writing, just talking. You eavesdrop, because of course you do. Signs are everywhere now, he says softly. She's weaving through us. In dreams. In wood. In birdsong. Even the biscuits. You're not sure what he means by that last part, but you don't interrupt. He looks up and meets your eye. There's more to see, he says. We're not done. That night, another storm appears, but this one is different. It doesn't roar. It doesn't thrash. It simply rains. Rain like you've never known, warm and silver and soft. Each drop seems to ring faintly when it hits the deck. Not clang or thud, ring. Like a bell. Like 1,000 tiny wind chimes falling from the clouds. The crew walks through it slowly, in silence. Some hold out their hands. Others raise their faces. The cat hides, of course, but the rest of you soak in the music. You don't try to collect the rain. It doesn't seem like something that wants to be owned. After the rain, the ship feels lighter. Cleaner. Like it's shed something you didn't know it was carrying. Even the sails seem wider. Historians still argue about the psychological effects of weather at sea. Rain could induce melancholy or peace. Sunlight could inspire or exhaust. But this rain feels intentional. Like it chose you. One morning, Tully gives you a piece of driftwood he found tied with a scrap of ribbon. You untie it. Carved into its surface, a spiral, and a word. Soon. You don't know if it's a warning, a promise, or a reminder. You keep it in your hammock anyway. The ship's cat starts sleeping curled around it. More dreams come now. You see her again, the creature. Not always clearly. Sometimes it's just the horn. Sometimes the shimmer of her skin. Once you dream you're standing on water with her beside you, and she's singing, though no sound comes out. In the dream, you ask her what she wants. She doesn't answer. She just looks. And somehow, you understand. To be remembered. You wake up with salt on your cheeks. Not sweat, not tears. Salt. The sea is changing you. And maybe, you're letting it. Somewhere around the 12th day after the shimmer, though no one's keeping exact count anymore, the ship reaches still water again. Not the terrifying kind, where the wind dies and the sun beats down mercilessly. This stillness is peaceful, like the sea has exhaled, like it's waiting for you to speak first. You hear it before you see it, a soft chime, faint as wind through glass. Not from the ship, not from the sky, just around. You lean over the rail, and there, drifting lazily on the surface of the water, are bells. Dozens of them, not large, not metal, and definitely not man-made. They resemble jellyfish, but with translucent bodies shaped like tiny domes. At the center of each, a thin filament that twitches just slightly, creating a faint, melodic vibration when the water shifts. The sound they make is the gentlest thing you've ever heard, like someone brushing wind chimes with velvet gloves. Groggly spots them too. He stares for a while, then says, "I once heard of a sailor who swore the sea played music. Thought he was cracked. Now, not so sure." The bells float on, each drifting in a separate direction, but never colliding. Point one drifts close to the hull. You and a few others gather to look. No one touches it. That feels like breaking the rules. You just watch. Then, faintly, you hear it ring, twice. Ding. Ding. And the captain says, almost to himself, "She's inviting us to remember." There it is again, that word. Remember. Not discover. Not find. Not even see. Just remember. You think back to the spiral symbols, the dreams, the quiet songs whispered into waves. You realize none of this feels new. It all feels oddly familiar. Like a story you were told once, long ago, and only now are beginning to understand. That evening, the crew gathers without being told. They bring instruments, homemade or otherwise. Tin whistles. Empty barrels. A lute with 3 good strings. Someone brought spoons. Another simply claps. No one says what they're doing. They just start playing. It isn't a song anyone knows. But somehow, you all know it. The rhythm rises and falls like the tide. A few start humming. Then comes a line, half sung, half whispered. "She glides below the silver thread." Someone adds, "Where dreams and stars and sailors bled." Not exactly uplifting, but oddly soothing. You join in.by moonrise. You've got a full lullaby stitched together from murmurs and breath. The sea seems to listen. The bell creatures drift closer. They ring gently with the rhythm, like backup singers in another realm. The stars that night seem closer. Fewer maybe, but brighter. Like the sky has drawn in a little. Leaning close. The next morning, you find a spiral etched into your bunk post. You didn't do it. You don't think anyone else did either. It wasn't there yesterday. Now it is. You touch it. It's warm. Later, while swabbing the lower deck, you hear humming from the cargo hold. No one is supposed to be there. You descend slow. Careful. The humming stops. But something's been rearranged. Barrels in a spiral pattern, not stacked. Just placed. Gently. Thoughtfully. You stare for a long time. Eventually, you help finish the spiral. When you return topside, Gully is staring out at the horizon. He looks tired. Older than before. But calm. "She's close again," he says. "How do you know?" "She's dreaming about us." That night, more dreams. You're not alone in them. Others mention it at breakfast, awkwardly, cautiously. No one wants to be the first to say, "Did you see her again?" But eventually someone does. And everyone nods. Point one describes a hallway made of coral. Another, a sky with 2 moons and an ocean that breathes. Groggly says he was a bird for 3 minutes and then a biscuit. You don't judge. Your dream? You were floating above the ship, watching it sail. Then, the spiral creature swam up beside you. You weren't afraid. You reached out. And just before waking, your hand touched the tip of its horn. It wasn't cold. It felt like recognition. Historians still argue whether shared visions among sailors stem from suggestion, stress, or the particular psychology of long voyages. But what's happening here isn't hysteria. It's harmony. The crew no longer asks where they're going. The destination isn't important anymore. It's the drifting, the noticing, the listening. You're not sailing toward her. You're sailing with her. Every night now, someone sings. Every morning, someone whispers a word to the sea. The ship has become more than a vessel. It's become a memory, unfolding in real time. You stop marking days. You start marking moments. The morning starts with silence. Not the usual kind, the sleepy kind you get before coffee, or before Groggly starts cursing at ropes. This silence is intentional. Heavy, but not ominous. More like a held breath. You wake to find the whole ship is listening, though no one says so out loud. Even the sea has calmed. It lies flat as glass, unwrinkled and expectant. You climb to the deck and stop in your tracks. The horizon is gone, not obscured, not foggy, just not there. Sky and sea have blended into one seamless plane. It's not disorienting. It's peaceful. As though the ship has slipped into a place beyond coordinates. A place that isn't on any map because it's not a where, it's a when. Gully stands at the bow. He's dressed differently today. Not in his usual patched coat and mismatched gloves. Today, he's in something simple. Formal, almost. A long, dark vest over clean linen, a sash at his waist, bare hands folded in front of him. It's the closest he's ever looked to a priest. He turns to you and smiles faintly. Today, we remember out loud. You don't ask what he means. You already know. One by one, the crew gathers. No call. No bell. Just quiet footsteps and unspoken agreement. They line up across the deck, facing the sea. The cat, astonishingly, sits neatly beside the cook's booths and blinks as if bored, though you suspect it's more alert than anyone. Groggly clears his throat and steps forward. I remember the lanternfish, he says. The one that blinked in threes and circled our hull for an hour. I think it liked our music. A pause. No applause. Just a moment of silence, then a nod. Tully goes next. I remember the whispering water, he says. And the silver rain. And the way I felt like crying but didn't know why. Then Bosun Lesk. Gruff, skeptical Lesk, who never once joined in a song. He says. I remember the horn. I remember how it looked at me. Like it knew. One by one, each crew member steps up and speaks. Some memories are vivid, glowing shapes, dreams, colors. Some are mundane. A smell, a heartbeat, a soft moment staring at nothing. All of them are true. You go last. You step forward, heart thudding, but not out of fear. I remember, you say, being seen. No one needs more than that. The sea ripples, just slightly, as if nodding in approval. And then Gully raises one hand, the left, and traces a spiral in the air. She's here, he says softly. Closer than ever. The crew turns slowly. Out there, just beyond the bow, something stirs. A ripple, then another. A line of silver light dances across the water. Then the surface splits, not violently, but gently, and she rises. Not completely. Just enough to see her face. Her eyes. The spiral horn. The sea unicorn. She's even more magnificent now, clearer, more solid. Her eyes are deep pools of layered stars. Her breath creates ripples of light. And on her flank, barely visible, markings, not random, not natural. They look like your own carvings. The spirals from the ship. The symbols whispered into dreams. You see the map you've been following, not on paper, but on her skin. Gully whispers. She remembers too. You don't move. And no one does. She lifts her head, horn glinting in the morning light, and then she speaks, not aloud, not with words, but with feeling. It washes through you like a tide, a slow wave of understanding. Not information, just emotion. You feel joy, sadness, longing, hope, gratitude. You feel the weight of time, the gentleness of memory, and the importance of being witnessed. She doesn't need worship. She needs company. A moment of presence. Someone to say, I see you. And you do. She closes her eyes. Her horn pulses once with faint blue light. Then, slowly, she descends, back into the sea. Not gone, just beneath, still watching, still remembering. The crew stands quietly. A breeze stirs. The sails flutter. The ship moves forward, not because you command it, but because she allows it. Historians will never find the markings on her flank. No sketches will do her justice. No map will chart the moment the world softened and something ancient looked you in the eye and said, "You're part of this too." But you'll know. So will Gully. So will the cat. And maybe, somewhere, so will the sea. In the days that follow her final appearance, though final feels too permanent a word, life aboard the Pale Finch settles into a rhythm that's not quite routine and not quite ritual. Somewhere in between, the ship continues on a path no one questions. No compass checks. No star readings. Just steady, deliberate movement. It's as if the sea is carrying you now. Not pushing, not pulling. Carrying. You still do your chores. The sails don't trim themselves. The cat still demands food on a very specific, highly inconvenient schedule. The deck still collects grime. But every task feels different, quieter, reverent, even. The bell creatures return. Some afternoons, they drift past the hull again, those little jellyfish-sounding beings humming in harmony with the creak of wood and wind. Groggly calls them sea chimes. You like the name. It sticks. Lesk, formerly the loudest skeptic on board, begins crafting wind chimes from scrap metal and rope. He hangs them quietly near the stern and says nothing about them. The first time they ring in the breeze, the cat hisses, then promptly curls up beneath them and naps. You wake one morning to find a small silver scale in your boot. Too smooth for fish. Too large for any creature you've seen. It reflects light like a bubble, pink, green, blue, silver. No one claims it. No one asks where it came from. You sew it into your coat lining without a word. Historians still argue whether sailors kept tokens of sea sightings. Most say yes. A feather, a tooth, a bone shaped like a spiral. Evidence, or perhaps just anchors to memory. This scale is your anchor now. That evening, you pass the captain's cabin. The door is open. Inside, Gully is painting. Yes, painting. You didn't even know he owned brushes on canvas, in soft blues and pearl whites. He's recreating her, the unicorn. Except not as a perfect image. The horn is slightly askew. Her eyes are too large. The sea swirls in impossible patterns, but it feels right. You stand in the doorway for a long moment. She told me to try, he says, not looking up. Said memory fades unless you shape it. You leave him to it. That night, the crew sings again and no one organizes it. It just happens. Like mist rising off the sea. The song is the same one from before, but fuller now. The verses have grown. Someone added a new line about bells. Another about silver rain. You add a line too. She waits beneath where stars forget. Someone echoes. She waits for those who don't forget. Not bad, you think. The next morning, a strange object washes up on deck and no one saw it come. Just there, curled beside the mainmast like it belongs, a coil of rope, woven not from hemp but from something silkier. Seaweed? Hair? Thread pulled from moonlight? No one touches it. You all just nod. The ship starts to feel different in other ways. Faster, maybe. Lighter. More like a being than a machine. The wind always finds your sails now. Rain only comes when needed. The food doesn't spoil, though no one can explain why the fruit barrels stay full. The cat stops killing rats. Mostly because the rats have vanished. Or possibly, moved to the galley and formed a polite society. You're not sure. Every few days, someone finds a spiral symbol where it wasn't before. Once on the underside of a spoon. Once in a knot of rope. Once traced faintly in salt on the deck at dawn. The sea is still leaving messages. And you, dutiful crew, are still remembering. You start dreaming of land. Not the kind with taverns and tax collectors and loud markets, but strange, silent coastlines with cliffs made of glass and forests where the trees sing in chords. Tully says he's dreaming the same place. Groggly says he's dreaming about becoming a crab. Nobody judges him. The wind carries faint music now. Sometimes real, sometimes imagined. Once, you swear you hear a woman humming just beneath the waves. Another night, you hear a distant horn, soft and sorrowful, and the whole crew freezes for a moment, listening. Gully says nothing, but he doesn't look surprised. The course you're on, wherever it leads, feels less like a destination and more like a continuation. A spiral. Ever outward, ever inward, all at once. The world hasn't changed. You have. You begin to notice that even time has softened. Days blur. Not in the chaotic way of storms or long port repairs, but in a gentle, dreamlike rhythm. You stop measuring time by meals or watches. Instead, you measure by feeling, by breeze, by the color of the sea. The crew adapts without protest. Tully starts calling it sea time. Groggly suggests a new calendar based on jellyfish phases. No one takes him seriously, but no one laughs, either. Gully, now known half-jokingly as the listener, grows quieter still. He writes constantly, scrolls, maps, symbols, sometimes words and languages you don't recognize. You see a page one morning that simply reads, "She remembers what we forget. She forgets what we cannot carry." You don't ask .by now, asking feels rude. The ship has grown quieter too. Not empty. Just peaceful. Less clatter. More stillness. You hear the water's rhythms more clearly, the soft slap of waves against the hull, the faint whistle of wind through rigging. Even your own heartbeat seems louder, and then comes the feather dot it's waiting on your hammock one morning. Silvery white, faintly glowing, coiled at the tip. Not from a bird, no known bird anyway. It has a texture like clouded glass and bends in your hand like warm wax.no note. No explanation. You tuck it behind your ear for the day, and nothing feels difficult. Even scrubbing the deck feels light. Lesk finds one the next day. He wears his tucked into the band of his hat. No one says a word about it. But you all know. The ship starts to hum, softly, almost imperceptibly. At first, you think it's in your head. Then others mention it, at different times, in different tones. It's not always music. Sometimes it's a low vibration, like a chord being tuned. Sometimes it sounds like breath, or laughter, or silence with shape. The ship is alive now, and it's listening. Historians still argue about shipboard superstitions. Whether hulls remember trauma, whether vessels absorb emotion. But you're no longer reading history, you're sailing it. Gully makes an announcement one morning. He stands near the mast, hands behind his back, voice calm. "We're nearing the place." No one asks what place. You simply nod. That evening the stars arrive early. Too early. They blink into the sky while the sun still stains the clouds orange and purple. They pulse in odd formations, spirals, crosses, lines that don't match any charted constellation. The cat watches the sky for hours. You've never seen it do that. Then the wind changes. It doesn't pick up, exactly, it shifts. Carries with it a scent that doesn't belong to this world. A mix of cold stone, crushed petals, and something else. Something like memory. You breathe it in and feel like you've forgotten something important, and suddenly remembered it all at once. The sea around you begins to glow. No shimmer. No bioluminescence. Just a faint, steady silver, as if the ocean has decided to reflect not the sky, but what you feel. The pale finch glides forward without a sound, and there it is. Ahead. An island. Not large. Not on any map. Just there, rising gently from the water, its cliffs are smooth and ivory white. Trees bloom on the slopes, tall and narrow, their leaves glittering faintly like candlelight. A single stream glows as it runs from peak to shore, pouring into the sea with a hush that feels like a whisper you can't quite catch. You feel your heart slow. The ship stops without anchor. The crew gathers again, and no one shouts. No one orders. You simply know it's time. Rowboats are lowered. Not everyone goes ashore. Some remain aboard, eyes soft, content to witness from afar. But many, including you, step into the boat and drift toward land. As you draw closer, the island doesn't become clearer. It becomes stranger. Details slip. You see a staircase, and then you don't. You see a cave entrance, and then it's a tree. The shapes move, but not like illusions. More like dreams, changing depending on what you expect, or what you need. Tully reaches the shore and laughs. It's not loud. It's not giddy. It's a laugh of recognition, of peace. You step onto the sand. It is warm, but not hot. Soft, but not fragile. The wind here hums in the same tone as the ship. The island breathes with the same rhythm as the sea. You realize this is not land. This is memory made place. The spiral is everywhere, etched into stone, formed in flowers, glinting in the patterns of the stream. And just ahead, on a high, gentle hill, something moves. You see the horn first, then the glint of eyes. She is here, not swimming, waiting. You climb the hill slowly, not because it's steep, it's barely more than a slope, but because something in you wants to take your time. Every footstep sinks into the grass like memory into dream. Around you, the trees sway in a wind you can't feel. The stream sings quietly, threading its way uphill instead of down, and no one questions it. You glance behind. The rest of the crew has paused at the base. Some sit. Some stare. Some are quietly weeping, though they're not sad. Lesk is humming. Tully is lying on his back, arms stretched wide in the grass, grinning like he's remembered every good day he ever had. Only you climb now. The path turns into a spiral. Of course it does. It curls around a grove of pale trees, each one marked with soft scratches, symbols that remind you of the ship's carvings, the songs you've sung. Even that silly jellyfish Groggly once claimed had a sense of humor. And at the center of the spiral, standing quiet, motionless, waiting, is her, the unicorn. She is taller than you remember. Not monstrous, not looming, just present. Her horn glows with a faint inner light, like moonlight pressed into bone. Her coat isn't white or silver but something between, shifting, like memories when you try too hard to recall them. Her eyes are enormous and dark, with a shimmer of stars at the edges. She steps forward. You don't run. You don't kneel. You simply breathe. She stops just before you. You feel warmth, but not from her body. It radiates from something deeper. Not heat. Recognition. And then she leans her head forward. You raise your hand. And finally, you touch the horn. It is smooth. Cool. Vibrating faintly. Your head floods with sound. Not noise, not voices. Memory. Not just yours. All of it. The shimmer. The ship. The spiral. The old sailors who came before. The ones who saw her but said nothing. The ones who never made it this far. You hear lullabies whispered over oceans. You hear names of places never mapped. You hear the slow, steady pulse of the sea itself. You hear the word again, remember. You do. You will. She leans into your hand, and for a moment, just a breath, you forget who you are. You are the ship. You are the wind. You are the creature gliding beneath silver water, and then it passes. You're you again. Still standing, still touching the horn. She lifts her head and backs away. Not in Rejection.in completion. You don't speak. Words would only stain this. She turns, walks back through the spiral of trees, and vanishes into the light. You stay there for a while. Maybe minutes. Maybe hours. Eventually you descend. Back at the shore, the crew waits. No one asks what happened. They already know. You board the rowboat. The island grows fainter as you drift back toward the ship. By the time you reach the Pale Finch, the stream is gone. The cliffs are dissolving into mist. Soon, there is only open sea again. But she is still with you. In your hands. In your breath. In the spiral beneath your skin. You look at the crew. Every one of them has changed. Even the cat. Even the sea. And as the sails catch a breeze that wasn't there a moment ago, the ship begins to turn. Not home. Not onward. Just forward. Somewhere. In a place no one has named yet. And you will go. You will sail. And you will remember. The ship drifts now, steady and slow, through waters you no longer need to chart. You sit against the rail, eyes half closed, letting the rhythm of the waves carry your thoughts like leaves on a quiet stream. The sails sigh gently above. The wood creaks in time with the tide, a lullaby of timber and memory. Somewhere, a rope clinks softly against the mast. Someone hums below deck. Maybe it's Groggly. Maybe it's you. The sea is darker now, not storm dark, but evening dark. Calm. Endless. Safe. And the stars return. They dot the sky one by one, blinking into view like old friends arriving late to a party you never wanted to end. One falls, a slow, lazy arc across the heavens, and disappears without sound. The horned creature does not reappear. She doesn't need to. You feel her in every breath, every gust of wind, every pause between heartbeats. The ship knows her. The sea remembers her. And now, so do you. The spiral isn't something you follow anymore. It's something you carry. Quietly. Carefully. You let your eyes close. The waves rise and fall beneath you, a cradle that rocks not to wake, but to rest. No more questions now. No more maps. Just stillness. Just the sea. Just the long, gentle hum of something ancient watching over you from beneath the waves. Sleep comes easy here. And in dreams, the shimmer waits.